Characteristics and Skills of a Motivating Instructor. From Enhancing Adult Motivation to Learn, Chapter 3. Presentation by Sandy Kendell and Brittni Knebel. In Chapter 1 of our text, Enhancing Adult Motivation to Learn, we learned that motivation is key to learning. Years of research have confirmed that as motivation increases, academic achievement also increases. So anything we can do to increase motivation in adult learners will benefit them in their learning endeavors. One of the most influential factors in motivation and learning is the teacher or instructor. As current or future educators of adults, understanding how our actions and attitudes affect our students will be key to our success and to theirs. In this presentation, we will take a look at the characteristics and skills of a motivating instructor. Wildkowski, the author of our text, asserts that there are 5 pillars on which our abilities to effectively respond to the instructional needs of adults rests. If we lack any of them, our ability to teach adults will suffer. The 5 pillars are expertise, the power of knowledge and preparation. Expertise is our grasp of the subject matter which we will be teaching about, as well as our ability to convey it to adults through instructional methods. Empathy, the power of understanding and compassion. In 1969, empathy and education advocate Carl Rogers defined empathy as the ability to understand the student's reactions from the inside, a sensitive awareness of the way the process of education and learning seem to the student. Empathetic instructors seek to understand their students' perspectives and care deeply about those perspectives. Enthusiasm, the power of commitment and expressiveness. Wildkowski defines enthusiasm as a person's inner feelings as they are expressed in outward behavior. Enthusiastic educators demonstrate excitement for the subjects they are teaching, and through their actions are able to inspire enthusiasm for the subject in their learners. Clarity, the power of organization and language. Teaching so content is easy for learners to understand and organized to facilitate the learner in following along and participating. But also remembering that not everyone understands in the same way, so further clarification may be required. And cultural responsiveness, the power of respect and social responsibility. Understanding that students, indeed all people, are unique because of their different experiences and even their biology. And they all have a right to education that takes their diversity into account. During the rest of this presentation, we will take an in-depth look at each of the 5 pillars of adult instructors. The first pillar of adult instructors is expertise, the power of knowledge and preparation. Expertise is our grasp of the subject matter which we'll be teaching about, as well as our ability to convey it to adults through instructional methods. This pillar is divided into 3 parts. First, we know something beneficial for adults. Second, we know our subject well. And third, we are prepared to convey or construct knowledge with adults through an instructional process. Let's break these parts down further. The first part of expertise is knowing something which is beneficial for adults. The number 1 question adult learners have for their instructors is, "Can you really help me?" Adult learners come to us with vast experiences, and because of that experience, they can be demanding learners. They may be learning with us of their own accord or because of a requirement. Either way, our goal as instructors should be to provide learning in the form of specific examples which are relevant to the work and goals of our learners. If we can't show our learners how the information we are helping them learn is applicable to them, then our personal expertise will benefit only ourselves. The second part of expertise is knowing our subject well. When you know your subject well, you will be more confident, flexible, and creative in your instruction. Lack of knowledge in an area you are teaching will be a barrier to your students' success. With ample knowledge, you remove that barrier, and you will be more comfortable with questions that come from your learners. You will be more able to focus on the best ways to instruct your students when they experience learning challenges. So, do you know your subject well enough to instruct adults? How can you assess if you know it well enough to instruct them? Wildkowski suggests asking yourself these 6 questions. If you can answer them confidently, you are in a good position to instruct adults. First, do I really understand what I'm going to teach? One way to assess this is to see if you can explain it to yourself or others in your own words. Second, can I give more than one good example of what I'm teaching? Examples of research, analogies, facts, and stories are important for illustrating your subject. Learners will need multiple examples. The deeper your knowledge, the more examples you will have. Third, can I personally demonstrate the skill? Your credibility will be increased if you can. If for some reason you cannot due to limitations in the instructional setting, you should be able to access or create quality videos, instructions, models, or other materials that can be used to demonstrate the skill. Fourth, do I know the limits and consequences of what I am teaching? Knowing this shows the sensible side of your expertise. For example, if you are teaching approaches to human resource issues, can you describe the types of people the approaches will and won't work with? Can you explain your subject matter in terms of, if we approach the problem this way, here are some possible results of that method? Fifth, do I know how to bridge what I am teaching to the world of my learners? You should be able to connect the learning to your students' prior knowledge, real-world experiences, interests, and concerns. This will demonstrate the relevance of your knowledge. If you are unaware of the situations in which they will need to apply what is learned in your workshop or class, it is a sign you are not current in how your subject is applied in the real world. And sixth, do I know what I don't know? No one can know absolutely everything. Our adult students don't expect us to know everything, but they will expect honesty from you about the limits of your knowledge. Such awareness and honesty will demonstrate humility and may open up opportunities to explore further learning in collaboration with your students. The third part of expertise is being prepared to convey or construct knowledge with adults through an instructional process. Did you know, when lecturing, that Einstein would bury his head in his notes and speak haltingly in a monotone through his mustache? One of the most brilliant minds of the 20th century, and students would engage in small talk while he lectured. Knowledge isn't everything, and all people who are knowledgeable about a subject might not be skilled at teaching it. Fortunately, teaching abilities can be improved with study and practice. You should be familiar enough with your materials that you can make eye contact with your learners most of the time, even via live or recorded video. Instruction should flow and engage your learners in conversation. If you're referring to notes or slides, make sure you're doing more than just reading them. Prepare for instruction the way athletes prepare for a competition. Just as their skills come naturally to them in a contest, so should teaching come naturally to you when you are engaged with your students. The second pillar of adult instructors is empathy. Empathy is the power of understanding and compassion. Empathetic instructors seek to understand and care deeply about their students' goals, perspectives, and needs. There are 3 facets to empathy for instructors. First, we have a realistic understanding of the learner's goals, perspectives, and expectations for what is being learned. Second, we have adapted our instruction to the learner's levels of experience and skill development. And third, we continuously consider the learner's perspectives and feelings. The first facet of empathy in instruction is having a realistic understanding of the learner's goals, perspectives, and expectations for what is being learned. Traditionally, information on adult learners' goals, perspectives, and expectations has been obtained through the use of tools including observation, surveys, interviews, group forums, informal conversations, and assessing the products of their learning. More recently, a process known as appreciative inquiry has emerged. Appreciative inquiry looks at a system and asks, what are the things we appreciate and want to increase? In formulating ideals and vision, participants are guided toward reaching the ideals and vision they help to create. Appreciative inquiry helps uncover goals, perspectives, and expectations in a socially constructed manner. No matter how you seek to understand your learners' goals, you will want to then discuss the information you've gathered with your learners. This will allow you both to clarify any misconceptions and build in them an appreciation for your care. An expectation that will likely emerge will center around time and the desire for it to not be wasted. Adult learners generally have multiple life responsibilities, and they will expect that whatever time you require them to commit to the course will be for relevant activities that will help them grow in their knowledge and their ability to apply their knowledge in real-life contexts. The second facet of empathy in instruction is adapting our instruction to the learner's levels of experience and skill development. As instructors of adults, we do not want to be the reason our students feel frustration or fail. We need to make sure we are providing things for learners to do that are within their capabilities, neither too easy nor too hard. Consistently giving assignments that are too easy will be unmotivating and cause boredom, while assignments or materials that are too hard will cause lack of confidence and may even result in discouragement from continuing to learn. As Wildkowski writes, you cannot take anyone from anywhere unless you start somewhere near where they are. Diagnostic and formative assessments without grading consequences can be valuable tools for assessing where your students are in relationship to the material they need to learn. Scaffolding, a technique for providing learning supports at the appropriate times with gradual release of the learner toward more independent work, can be a powerful tool for adapting instruction, and it will be covered in more detail in Chapter 6 of our text. The third facet of empathy in instruction is purposing to continuously consider the learner's perspectives and feelings. As educators, we should have an attitude of desiring to know how our learners are experiencing the learning we are facilitating. We should be fascinated with how things look to our learners, from the way they interact with our course to their actual engagement with and processing of the content. The most important skill for this facet of empathy is listening for understanding. When learners feel listened to and understood, they will be more open to and feel safer listening to us. We can demonstrate we are listening by attuning our responses to our learners, such as by nodding or selecting an understanding tone when composing a written response to them. Validating our learners' feelings on a subject or experience, even if we don't agree with their perspective personally, can also go a long way toward building an empathetic relationship. Perhaps the biggest benefit of building an empathetic relationship, besides it being a humane and compassionate thing to do, is it may influence our learners' ways of thinking about something or interacting with others. You've heard the saying that a substantial amount of learning is caught rather than taught, and there is a likelihood that our students will take on some of the attitudes and behaviors we model for them.
The third pillar is enthusiasm. Look at the two pictures. Think of a teacher that you had that was motivating. Did they look like the first picture or did they look like the second picture? What were they like? So the author talks about his geometry teacher and how his geometry teacher always was not excited, didn't have any enthusiasm, came to class looking upset, and one of his classmates shouted out, "This is what geometry can do to you." And it changed his perspective. It made him feel like, you know what? Yes, we are what we teach. So we have to be careful that what we're putting off to our students is what we want to teach, and that every learner knows it based on our enthusiasm. So the author goes on to say that we have to show emotion in our teaching. We have to have energy, passion, our presence. It's our conviction. So if we cannot have these, then our students aren't going to believe what we're talking about. And so we have to establish these so we can actually make a difference. We have to value what we teach for ourselves as well for the learner. Are we interested in our subject? We have to value it. It affects the learner. They can tell if we value our topic or not. We also have to display our commitment with degrees of emotion. So we have to show our interest. So what does this mean? This means get into it, dramatize it. So really get into what you're teaching. In our textbook, it talks about different ways to measure teacher enthusiasm. It has to do with what are they speaking like? What's their tone? Are they using their arms and hands? Are they moving about the room to illustrate their point? Are they just staying in one spot? Do they change their facial expression? And do they just display that energy that you can just feel? We also talk about the destroyers of enthusiasm and how these can hurt our enthusiasm. Things like just getting in a rut and not being able to get out of it. Maybe it's time for a job change then. Maybe it's just stress. We're just drained and exhausted. Maybe you need to take a vacation. Maybe you just feel like you're just not learning enough and you don't have that success anymore. Maybe you forgot what your purpose is. It just feels mundane, the same thing over and over. Or it could be you're just living in the past and you see things as they once were. Learners just aren't as good as they are today. Or you're plateauing. You're feeling like you're not challenged. You're just stagnant. So these are serious problems that can destroy enthusiasm. So be sure to recognize them and take care of these problems so they don't get out of hand and affect your teaching. The fourth pillar is clarity. So clarity is still necessary for motivating instruction. No matter how enthusiastic you are, no matter how motivating you are still needing to have instructional clarity for our students to understand the material. So what exactly does this look like? You must plan and conduct your instruction so everyone can follow and understand. So anticipate problems that you see might arise when you teach this. Have examples ready to go. Graphics, infographics are great to help students understand. Have checkpoints along the way. Know what your objective is and have a clear intro. Make sure you rehearse your directions for any activity that you're going to do. Also, it's important to increase the wait time. Make sure you give plenty of wait time when you ask a question. And partner up, have students partner up, have them look over each other's notes, compare their notes, allow for students to record. All of these things will help students understand your instruction and it will make it clear to them. It's also important to provide a way for learners to comprehend what has been taught if it's not initially clear. So if your instruction is not clear, make sure there's something there that can still comprehend what you're saying and what you're trying to teach. So there's a great instructional clarity checklist and on page 85 in our textbook. And in this checklist, it talks about were things explained simply and did they stay on topic? Did they show graphics? And what this does is this checklist helps better understand how clear the instruction was. The fifth pillar is cultural responsiveness. So the biggest word that you can take out of this section is respect. Have respect for diversity. Everyone is different. There are different perspectives out there. We all have a right to instruction that accommodates their diversity. So what does this mean? It means that everyone has a differing opinion. We have to respect that. And if we do respect that, then that way everyone can understand. We must create a safe and inclusive and respectful learning environment. This safe environment allows for personal opinions not to be shot down. Everyone has a different perspective. So we have to invite the feelings and ideas and concerns for everyone. Everyone must feel safe and respected. The author talks about how this is a hard task, but we have to engage the motivation of all learners. We must try and motivate every student. We cannot leave behind any student, so we have to motivate all of them. So we must relate the course content and learning to the social concerns of learners and the broader. So what this means is that we must reflect these qualities. Examples are, if we want to be how we should be critical conscious, we need to reflect these qualities. Power awareness, know the truths that dominate the environment, have critical literacy, be willing to keep probing and probe for deeper meaning under the surface. Desocialization, recognize and challenge myths, values, and bias. Self-education, use learning opportunities to initiate social change and ideas. That is what we strive for. We must have those qualities to be culturally responsive. In conclusion, we must be an expert. We must know the material. We must be empathetic. We must have empathy. We must listen to our students. We have to be enthusiastic. We have to get excited and put emotion into our instruction. Yet we still have to be clear. We have to know the material and be clear and have clear instructions that are understandable. And lastly, we must be culturally responsive. We must provide a safe environment where all perspectives are welcome. If we use these 5 pillars, and we will be a respected and effective teacher with adult learners.